This evening is an example for me of how the best laid plans get better as they change. Been laying these plans for a long time, and then they meet the real people, and then you have to move with them. So the Paul Winter Consort will accompany MarkDoty and Marie Howe. This collage is built in sections, one of which includes phrases collected in the small tent across the way over the last 3 days. And thanks must go to the many people who volunteered to work in that tent over these days, collecting hour by hour a wide range of offerings from young people, old people, people who thought they didn't have anything to say, people who thought they had too much to say. And Mark and Marie have sifted. MarkDoty and Marie Howe.
Towers falling, a dream of towers, necessity of fountains, and my poor, stirring among our dreams, poor of my own spirit and tribes, hope of towers and lives, looking out through my eyes, the city, the growing body of our love and hate, the root of the soul, and war in its black doorways.
As each tower goes down, it concentrates into itself, transforms itself infinitely slowly into a black hole, infinitesimally small, mass without space, where each light, each life put out lies down within us.
Okay, I guess I can get through this if you're going to do that. All right. This is a very, very new poem. It's called In Their Flight. Who believes in them? It doesn't matter much to the souls who are newly set free, wheeling in the air above the site of their last moments on earth. Suppose we could see them. They'd be like starlings, wouldn't they? No like. They'd be birds. One of those autumn gatherings when the solitaries assemble in great numbers over the waste places and the remaining fields, turning in the air together as if they made a huge piece of cloth, folding in on itself, or a mathematical diagram of folding. Because in truth, I don't think the souls would be in any hurry to get anywhere. Wouldn't they first have to assess where they are as they recognize one another through the smoke and the dust? Or perhaps there's nothing obscuring the air for them, just open sky, entirely light-washed as they gather into a great progression now that they've left their encompassing, defining bodies. In community, at last, we want to proceed in our flock, our troop. Incorporated into a radiant vitality without ceasing. You want more than that? Of course you do. You want the steady little mosquito drone to go on and on ceaselessly. You want to be the one who gets to do the perceiving forever. Of course you do. But here's my guess. That's what the incarnate wish. It's another thing for the dead. They've been singular long enough. Living, we can't let ourselves see what enormous work it is to be one of something, to keep the barriers erect, how difficult it is to sustain those boundaries. And so the dead, edgeless, loosed from particularity, move out toward the edge of the city, someplace where the great flock can unknot itself freely, where they can feast oblivious to the column of smoke roiling behind them. So this is a poem, it's an answer to him, even though Federico Garcia Lorca never appears in the poem, okay? He's in the title only, but he'll never come back, so be prepared for that. To Garcia Lorca. A whole acre's containment and release, yellow exhalation, stiff stalk and copper blaze blaring into the 7th Avenue AM, sunflowers in a square rusting tub, casually set on the linoleum of the corner market, the market on 18th Street, where the large, brusque, and tender Romanian barks your order back at you and then places change in your hand like a benediction. Against the wall, away from the counter, sulfurous heads fused into one radiating distillate of the infinitive to bloom, and almost entirely ignored. Since we understand, even in the 8 o'clock scurry toward purpose, commerce, engagement, that the principal beauty of New York lies in human faces. Foot soldiers of summer, flown from a Mexican field, boxed north from Alabama, neck to neck in an impossible crowd, 200 fierce dawns up to their hard green waists in cold water, multitude, shocking in their sameness, and then in the startling shag variations of their faces, dreaming nothing language knows, though they are dreaming. Gazes both open and somehow elsewhere, and in this way also they resemble us, half asleep still, unworldly, carrying our sacks of coffee prepared as we have requested it, and all the time this town's own respiration conducted through our 10,000 acres bud and scatter. This morning on 16th Street, a dragonfly, intricate, upside down, probably lost, but entirely self-possessed, clung to a brownstone wall, fixed and immobile, discolored bronze, fountain of refreshment, still point of the neighborhood, while the taxis fret the air wild between the curbs, already honking the song of ongoing and indifferent setting out. Same chorus as my tub of bloom, basket of sustenance, refilling itself to feed the multitude who doesn't want them, since they are already flowers, already carry shoulder to shoulder that diffident power, stand even now, stalk to stripped stalk in the killing tub. Enough water to sustain us a little while we flare out at the pores, out through this dark-rimmed, gold-dusted seeing. This is a poem which borrows its plot from a story, folk tale from the Mexican state of Chiapas. It's kind of a nice way of not having responsibility for what happens in the poem. It's not, to some degree. This is called Letter to God. The dogs were tired and bewildered, stunned by the ways they'd been treated by men, yelled at, kicked around, left unfed in the cold and the rain, not to mention the usual predations, time and illness, cold creak of the hips, tumor, clouded eye, ears that ceased to help at all. What could they do? To whom might they appeal? The wisest among them, that was his reputation, suggested that a letter be drafted to God. Only by appeal to a higher authority might their plight be considered. But once the questions were written, who would carry it? Who knew how to imagine the way? The ablest was chosen, a retriever. He could walk for days, and his entire being knew the imperative to carry. But how will you carry it, they asked. In my mouth. No, you'll drop it every time you bark. And then the wisest made this plan. They'd roll their plea into a scroll tightly, and their hero would open his legs and lift his tail and carry the missive inside him, where he was sure to keep it until he reached the gates of paradise. And off he trotted, head high and tail, only a slight delicacy in his walk betraying discomfort, into the fields with their blonde grasses, upstream, off toward the border of the world. Do I need to tell you he never returned? Why, Lord, the letter read, did you put a wicked clock spring in our bellies? Our eyes glaze, our old hips refuse a step. We can't even lift a leg to mark a trail. Why, given these indignities, are we further subject to the harrowing of men? We who stand before them, all expectation. Why are we met with blows, or worse? In every town of this world you've given us, in pen and shelter, in cellar and alley and hole in the dirt, we, your children, await your reply. Therefore, when each dog meets a stranger, it's necessary to sniff beneath the tail. Perhaps this time, this is the returning messenger. It is still possible a reply might reach them. When I was living in coastal Massachusetts, and I developed rather intense desire for a tattoo, which was inflamed by my desire was inflamed by the fact that at that point in Massachusetts you couldn't get a tattoo, which of course made it all the more interesting. And we went out to Iowa City to do some teaching for a semester, and as you know, we went from a sort of democratic state where there are laws to protect you from your own self-destructive impulses to Iowa, where you can do what you want, and because it's a Republican government, so therefore there were tattoo parlors on every corner in Iowa City. My tattoo. I thought I wanted to wear the Sacred Heart, to represent education through suffering, how we're pierced to flame. But when I cruised the ink shop's dragons, cobalt tigers and eagles in billowy smokes, my allegiance wavered. Butch lexicon, anchors and arrows, a sailor's iconic charms, tempting, but none of them me. What noun would you want spoken on your skin your whole life through? I tried to picture what I'd never want erased, and saw a fire-ring corona of spiked rays, flaring tongues surrounding an emptiness, an open space. I made my mind up. I sat in the waiting room chair. Then something My nerve, faith in the guy with biker boots and indigo hands, wavered. It wasn't fear. Nothing hurts like grief, and I'm used to that. His dreaming needle was beside the point. Don't I already bear the etched and flaring marks of an inky trade? What once was skin has turned to something made, written and revised beneath these sleeves. Hearts and banners, daggers and flowers and names. I fled. Then I came back again. Isn't there always a little more room on the skin? It's too late to be unwritten, and I'm much too scrawled to ever be erased. Go ahead, prick and stipple and ink me in. I'll never be naked again. From here on out, I wear the sun, albeit blue. So the truth of the matter is that I fled and did not go back again. But when I tried to write a poem about not getting the tattoo, you know, my poem was inert. And so 4 or 5 drafts into it, I decided to at least give myself the tattoo in this kind of ink. And the result of that was that my courage was bolstered. And I found myself a little later on getting a tattoo, which is not the one described in the poem. You don't need to know anything more about that. One must preserve a little mystery, at least, right? And when I get this tattoo, then Paul becomes suddenly consumed with jealousy and a desire for a tattoo of his own. We went to Amsterdam. We were looking at the great Dutch still life paintings of the 17th century for a little project I was working on. And we were so moved by these paintings that were ordinary things. A lemon, half a herring, became so charged with life that they seemed to have been lifted out of time. And we were particularly struck by a kind of painting called the vanitas painting, a still life, which represents things on the edge of disappearance, bubbles about to break, candles just snuffed out, skulls, moldering fruit, all intended to remind us of the evanescence of the flesh. Thus reminded, we went out and found a tattoo parlor. Paul's tattoo. The flesh dreams toward permanence. And so, this red carp noses from the inked dusk of a young man's forearm as he tilts the droning burren of his trade toward the blank page of my dear one's bicep. A scene framed from where I watch in an arched mirror, a niche of mercuried glass, the shape of those prosceniums in which still lifes reside, in cool museum rooms, tulips and medlars, oysters and snails and flies on permanently perishing fruit. Vanitas. All is vanitas. For these 2 arms, one figured, one just beginning to be traced with the outline of a heart, are surrounded by a cabinet of curiosities, the tattooist's reflected shelves of skulls, horses, pigs, and photos of lobes and nipples shocked into style. Trappings of evil, unlikely to convince. The shop's called 666. A casket and a pit bull occupy the vestibule, but the coffin's pink, and the hellhound licked our faces, clean as the latex this bearded boy donned to prick the veil my lover's skin presents. Rent now, with a slightly comic heart, warmly ironic, lightly shaded, and crowned as if to mean feelings, queen or king of any day. Certainly this one. A quarter hour suddenly galvanized by a rippling electric trace, firing adrenaline, and an odd sense of limit defied. Not overcome, exactly. This artist's filled his shop with evidence of that. To what else do these clean Dutch white bones testify? But resistant, still, skin grown less subject to change, ruled by what is drawn there. A freshly shadowed corazon, now heron dark and ringed by blue exultant bits of sweat or flame, as if the self contained too much to be held, and flung out droplets from the dear proud flesh, stingingly warm. A steadier hand has raised into art, or a wound, or both. The work's done, our design complete. A bandage to absorb whatever pigment the newly writ might weep, 100 guilders, a handshake, back out onto the street. Now all his life he wears his heart beneath his sleeve. Thank you very much. What are we waiting for? Assembled in the forum.
The barbarians are due here today.
Why isn't anything going on in the Senate? Why aren't the senators sitting there legislating?
Because the barbarians are coming today. What's the point of senators making laws now? Once the barbarians are here, they'll do the legislating.
Why don't our distinguished orators turn up, as usual, to make their speeches, say what they have to say?
Because the barbarians are coming today, and they're bored by rhetoric and public speaking.
Why this sudden bewilderment, this confusion? How serious people's faces have become. Why are the streets and squares emptying so rapidly? Everybody going home, lost in thought.
Because night has fallen and the barbarians haven't come, and some of our men just in from the border say there are no barbarians any longer.
Now, what's going to happen to us without barbarians? They were, those people, a kind of solution.
Someone asked me in a letter. Again, and as ever, the most pressing questions are naive ones.
I am tired of little tight-faced poets sitting down to shape perfect, unimportant pieces. Poems that cough lightly, catch back a sneeze. This is the time for big poems, roaring up out of sleaze. Poems from ice, from vomit, and from tainted blood. This is the time for stiff or viscous poems, big and big.
Two truths approach each other. One comes from inside, the other from outside. And where they meet, we have a chance to catch sight of ourselves. The man who sees what's about to take place cries out wildly, "Stop! Anything, if only I don't have to know myself."
I am almost ready to confess. It is not some awful misunderstanding that has carried me here. My arms full of the ghosts, almost ready to see how at each turning I chose this way, this place, and this verging of ocean on earth, with the horns claiming I can keep on if only I step where I cannot breathe. My coat is leprosy, and my dagger is a lie. Must I shed them? Do I have to end my life in order to begin an ordinary? The unthinkable can be thought.
If you are lucky in this life, a window will appear between two armies on a battlefield. But when the soldiers look into the window, they don't see their enemies. They see themselves as children, and they stop fighting and go home and go to sleep. When they wake up, the land is well again.
What is now proven, was once only imagined.
In the future, the sidewalks will turn to wax, and the people of this town will slow down.
In the future, we will use our hands to cover the mouths of the unkind.
In the future, the doctor will say, "It's a girl."
In the future, we will make new alphabets out of fallen buildings.
In the future, we will touch the past.
Nuclear silos will dissolve into wishing wells.
My heart will be water.
In the future, we will forget our names.
We will sing to the silence, and the silence will hear us.
And in the future, we were all there with strangers' hands in ours.
We were all there, tuning violins to the sound of the rivers.
We were all there under the shadows of the leaves of the trees on the white tent.